There is something corrupting about receiving money you didn't earn. It's certainly true for trust funders. It's true for welfare recipients. It's true for your kids. If I treated my kids like the U.S. Congress treats Israel, they'd be in rehab. So I wonder, and that's everyone knows that. So I wonder, why is this system still in place?
I have two words for you that I don't think will come as much of a surprise. This is not to explain why it's still in place, but to explain its current role. These two words are Barack Obama. One of the last things he did before he left office was give Israel what he touted as the largest aid package in Israel's history. It's $38 billion over the course of 10 years, which came with so many strings attached and basically were his way of deflecting from what he was really doing in the Middle East, which is getting us involved in a disastrous policy of enabling, arming, and funding Iran, funding the Palestinian Authority and its terror campaign, and kind of shackling Israel rather than helping the Israelis win its own wars. Thankfully, his successor in office, Donald Trump, had a very different approach to how to do things in the Middle East. But we're back now with the third Obama administration term, which is basically what the Biden administration is, to the same old logic of kind of enmeshing ourselves in this kind of support. Israel needs a very clear and very simple thing. Israel needs the freedom to win its own wars on its own terms with its own arms and its own soldiers. It could do that. And yet again now, especially since October 7th, we're seeing American intervention interrupting it.
So why is, and I just know this firsthand from saying, hey, we have a lot in common with Israel, we have similar interests, but no two countries have identical interests. I mean, it's just by nature, right? Every country is, just as every family does, every person does. So, but why would people who claim to be pro-Israel shout that point down?
Well, I think the entire conversation around it has become so toxic. This is the thing that really bothered me when I started thinking about this issue. It's this kabuki theater of talking about the Israel lobby supports some kind of, magical, mystical rain dance that makes, $4 billion American dollars go to Israel every year, which means that Israelis have an interest to kind of thwart America's interest in the region. All of that really needs to go away. Everyone here is just sort of locked in this kind of bad psychodrama. It's actually very, very, very simple. America has its own interests. It's very true. It should always protect its own interests first. There is no lack of clarity on that. But Israel also has its own interests.
Right.
And right now, being tethered to this aid, again, losing $1.3 billion every year, losing 22 to 60,000 jobs every year, and more importantly, having its hands tied by an American administration says, well, we give you money. Now, surely we get a say about whether or not you should stop fighting your mortal enemy that just murdered 1,300 of your civilians to give them fuel and supplies for a few days, which serves the interest of no one, including the United States. That's just bad mojo. When things are simple, they're best.
So smart. So there is, there is an Israel lobby, just as there are, lots of lobbies in Washington, but there's also a pretty large group of Americans who are not in Washington, who are not Jewish, who are not neocons, who are evangelical Christians. One of them now is the Speaker of the House, who have an emotional attachment to Israel that seems totally sincere to me. And they believe that sending Israel more money is by definition supporting Israel. And again, I think they believe this in good faith. But what would you say to them?
Well, I've heard the current speaker say this line. I am very grateful for his support and for the support of anyone who stands with Israel, because I think, that is absolutely the politically and morally correct thing to do. But then again, I urge people to really stop for a moment and think. And we have such a clear example happening right now. Israel is fighting against a deadly terrorist organization that hates Israel, hates America, wants to fight the West wherever it can. The simplest thing that you could do for Israel right now is get out of its way and let it win. And now you see the Biden administration, by the way, when there are a dozen American citizens held hostage in the largest hostage crisis we've had since, the late 70s. No one's talking about that for some reason. You have, scores of American soldiers being wounded on bases all across the Middle East by Iranian drones. Nobody's talking about that for some reason. The best thing you could do right now is, rather than insist on, silly ceasefires that really do not serve America's interests and certainly don't serve Israel's interests. Just get out of the way and let Israel win its war. I was a soldier in the army. I've seen my share of combat, but you don't need to be General Patton to understand that wars are actually very straightforward. The goal is to win them. This is the best and most acute support that Israel needs right now. Let us win this war.
I think you're making a rational case. I wonder what the view within Israel is about what you're saying. Is there support for this perspective?
Well, I think it's very, very complicated. I sadly say that many Israeli leaders are sort of penny wise, pound foolish. And it comes from a good place. There is tremendous love for the United States of America in Israel, more than just, interest aligned. There's a kind of a spiritual love, because I think Israelis understand very acutely that we share a kind of, if I may, religious sensibility here. The name for the United States in Hebrew is Artzot Habrit, which literally means the lands of the covenant. We understand that we are both covenantal nations chosen by God to bring light and meaning into this world. So there's a profound, profound, profound love for America. And so a lot of Israelis want to be very closely aligned with America. They appreciate all the help and the support that they get. All of that is important. But I think it's time for Israelis, too, to wake up and understand. And I think October 7th might finally be that wake-up call that it is a sovereign nation with its own interests, and it should never, ever agree to any policy that shackles it to the interest of another country.
Well, exactly. And that's something that we could learn, too, not just in a relationship with Israel, but a
Hallelujah.
relationship with a bunch of other countries.